and welcome to Inside Politics. I'm Anastasiya Lavrina. At a time of shifting geopolitical alignments and growing uncertainty across Eurasia, Azerbaijan-United States relations are once again drawing renewed attention. From President Donald Trump's recent message to participants of the 31st Baku Energy Week, to Washington's decision to extend the suspension of Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act, questions are emerging about the future direction of U.S. engagement in the South Caucasus. During the event, President Ilham Aliyev also received a delegation led by the United States Assistant Secretary of State for Economic, Energy and Business Affairs. What do these developments signal for strategic cooperation between Baku and Washington? How important is Azerbaijan in the evolving regional energy and security landscape? And with Armenia approaching another electoral cycle, could domestic political dynamics shape the broader regional equation? Joining us today to unpack these issues is Glen Howard, President and Chairman of the Saratoga Foundation in Washington, D.C., one of America's leading experts on Eurasian and South Caucasus affairs. Mr. Howard, welcome to Inside Politics.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for your time. Well, President Donald Trump's message to Baku Energy Week and the extension of the Section 907 waiver have been viewed by some as signals of strategic continuity from Washington toward Azerbaijan. Do you see these developments as tactical decisions or indicators of a broader recalibration of U.S. policy in the South Caucasus, and why Azerbaijan matters to U.S. strategic interests now?
Well, I think that the Trump administration is basically continuing its transactional connectivity with the Caucasus region, and I think that Azerbaijan is a big part of this. And so the extension of the 907 waiver is always welcome news. We would like to see it permanently removed from U.S. law, but unfortunately the best we can get is the extension. But this time President Trump extended and provided the waiver again, but he also sent President Aliyev a gift as a gesture of his gratitude for Azerbaijan. So I think that this is very important. It's just another sign of the evolution of Azerbaijan's relations with the United States. I think that commercial connectivity is very important. I think that the United States is looking also at the Persian Gulf and the problems with Iran. And I think that the Trump administration is looking at Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, and the gas corridor across the Caspian. I think that this is now becoming a key part of their thinking. And obviously, the rapprochement between Armenia and Azerbaijan is very, very significant and important. And I think everybody's kind of looking forward to the June 7th elections in Armenia, hoping that that'll be a new stage in relations for the region.
Absolutely. But more in detail, the extension of the suspension of Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act is a significant legal and diplomatic step. What does this decision signal regarding the current administration's pragmatism towards security cooperation with Baku, and what resistance, let's say, if any, remains within Congress?
Well, Congress will always have that segment of its membership that is very pro-Armenia and very engaged with Armenia, which I understand. But it seems that right now that the only voice that matters is Donald Trump's, and he's trying to get Congress to support their initiatives. And then I think as long as Azerbaijan and Armenia are talking about the Zangezur corridor, the TRIP corridor, if you want to call it, the Trump route for international peace, I think that this is all signaling that the region is moving in a different direction, and we're hoping that Armenia will continue its normalization of relations with Turkey after the election. So I think that right now the Trump administration sees Azerbaijan as a big, important economic partner in the region, and that it's a part of their efforts to bring Azerbaijan into the Abraham Accords, possibly, and also bring about peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan, which he wants to claim credit for, which I think that he has certainly played a role in. But I give the credit also to President Aliyev and President Pashinyan for actually coming to the stage where we can talk about this. Now, the important thing to keep in mind is that after the June 7 elections, that we want to see some more progress, or Azerbaijan certainly does want to see progress with the change in the constitution. And so we're going to be looking to see what type of developments occur inside of Armenia, and whether Pashinyan will go the extra mile to try to bring and finally finalize the peace. But I would also like to point out that Secretary of State Rubio and National Security Advisor Rubio, who wears two hats, is now engaging with Georgia. And they're trying to develop normalization plans with the government in Tbilisi. And the United States just sent a delegation there. And the missing element in the Caucasus was actually Georgia, because the United States has not been engaging Georgia at all, focusing specifically on Azerbaijan. So we all know that there's this connectivity issue in the Caucasus, where Georgia is a very important part of that because of the Kars-Tbilisi Railroad. And they've just come to this agreement to resume the Kars-Tbilisi Railroad and get it started again. And so we're now seeing a goods ship from Turkey to Armenia through Kars-Tbilisi, through Georgia. So this is very welcome development. And so the region now is, I would say, becoming more integrated economically. But there's still some missing parts. We're not completely there yet, but everything looks really good. I think that there's momentum in the region from J.D. Vance's trip to Baku and Armenia. And I think that just general now, we're really on the threshold of something new. The only ones that are upset about what's happening in the South Caucasus are the Russians. So, and they certainly could play a spoiler role in this and undermine all this progress, but it seems increasingly less likely.
Well, Mr. Howard, you touched Georgia. Indeed, that's very interesting. And during Secretary Marco Rubio's recent visit to Yerevan, the United States and Armenia advanced a trade framework alongside broader strategic agreements. Absolutely, TRIP is increasingly being discussed not only as a regional transport initiative, but as a route linked to broader Eurasian connectivity and supply chain diversification. So the question is, how significant could this project become in the wider geopolitical competition over the trade routes?
Well, I think right now, as you and I are both aware, that there is a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, and that energy exports are not getting out of the region. And because of this geopolitical shift and the inability of the Trump administration to bring about some sort of agreement with Iran, Iran now is in control of the Gulf. And so this is creating almost a panic in Asia as countries like Japan are now turning to Azerbaijan and Central Asia for energy resources, because they are completely unclear and unsure about what's going to happen with the state of alliances in the Persian Gulf region caused by the Iran war. Now, Iran is going to get economically more powerful because of the transit fees it will derive from the Strait of Hormuz. So all of this is going to cause more focus on Azerbaijan, more focus on the energy in the Caspian region, because people want to diversify their energy supplies. And right now, everything has come to a halt in the Persian Gulf. So this geopolitical aspect of what's happening with Iran and the United States is now benefiting Baku, because basically they want to find alternative, reliable energy supplies. And I think Secretary of State Rubio, when he met with the Turkmen foreign minister on May 25th, he basically indicated his support for a Trans-Caspian gas pipeline and Turkmenistan's efforts to diversify its natural gas exports. That's nothing but good news for Azerbaijan, because that means the United States will talk to Azerbaijan about further evolution of relations in the region, and Trans-Caspian gas going through Azerbaijan is only going to benefit the middle corridor, make it stronger. And I would also add that President Trump's visit to China was also beneficial for Azerbaijan because basically the United States is now de-escalating its tension with China, trying to improve trade relations, and there's a strategic benefit spillover from that relationship with China that will strengthen and enhance the middle corridor. So the real unknown issue right now is what's going to happen in the Persian Gulf. But regardless of what happens, it's the South Caucasus is benefiting from this, and we're seeing these major shifts geopolitically. Also due in part to the changes in policy by the Trump administration that is now becoming more engaged with Georgia, finally, and trying to improve relations. And Azerbaijan-Armenia relations will, I think, continue the same good trajectory that we've seen prior to the June 7 elections, barring some black swan event in Armenia, which I hope to God does not happen. But, you know, you can never rule out what the Russians may do in Armenia. So they certainly don't like Pashinyan.
So, Mr. Howard, you partially answered my next question. Armenia is moving toward another election cycle aimed at political polarization and unresolved questions surrounding security, identity, and regional normalization. So there are a lot of expectations from June 7th and the results of the upcoming parliamentary elections. How do you assess the political mood inside Armenia, and could electoral considerations impact Yerevan's regional decision-making?
Well, I think, you know, that Pashinyan deserves credit. He has managed to, he lost a war, but he's managed to convince the population of Armenia that despite the loss of Karabakh, that actually they're going to benefit economically from improved relations with the European Union and the United States. And the United States is rewarding him with that by visiting Armenia and trying to create a new nuclear agreement for a nuclear power plant in Armenia with U.S. support. So these things, he has successfully lost Karabakh, but he's also managed to identify a new relationship with Europe at the expense of Russia. And I think that this has been, I think he's done it very masterfully. Putin has thrown a lot of things at him, economic boycotts and trying to undermine him, Pashinyan, inside Armenia. And I think that this is, he's managed to withstand all these attacks and managed to put Armenia in a very good position now, even to the point where they're talking to NATO. So I think that this is nothing but good for the region because it certainly makes Moscow envious. It means that Armenia is one step closer to repairing its relations with with Azerbaijan and obviously with Turkey. And this is nothing good for the region because the Zangezur corridor will benefit from this. So everything right now, the trajectory is very, very good and very positive. But I'm a little bit cautious because I don't know about some of these unknowns. There's some things that could happen in the region that might undermine everything. And this makes me a little bit cautious.
Mr. Howard, and what are the main risks if a leadership transition or a shift in parliamentary of Armenia balance occurs? We don't know about the results of the elections, but if any changes, what are the global consequences for the region?
Well, I mean, judging by the polls inside of Armenia, it seems like Pashinyan is doing pretty well. And look, I mean, come on. I mean, European leaders, NATO leaders, U.S. Secretary of State, Vice President of the United States have all gone to Armenia. Armenia is receiving this unprecedented attention by the West, by the United States. So how could this not translate into something good for those Armenians who want to have good relations with their neighbors? And I think, in a way, Pashinyan has redefined that. So I don't know what type of spoiler there may be out there lurking. But if you look at the calendar, we're getting closer and closer to June 7th, to the election. So the clock is ticking. And I think Pashinyan is going to manage this, and I think he's going to win the elections. What he does after that, we don't know. It's a big if. But I think we could make some very important changes that could really, really matter in the history of the South Caucasus to the benefit of everybody, and the Armenian people, to the people of Azerbaijan, and to the people of Georgia, and the great neighbor to the south, Turkey.
Mr. Howard, but we cannot ignore the fact that Armenia is still too much dependent on Russian gas, and from the economic perspective, despite all of those, let's say, so-called sanctions or restrictions Russia is putting on the import of the Armenian products. So for the future, how do you think Armenia may balance its relations with Russia and European Union, European states and United States, if there is a possibility for this country still have a balanced approach and keep the relations in both directions?
Well, I agree with your caution. We don't know what's going to happen, and you're right. The right word in English is balancing act. Pashinyan is trying to balance Russia with Azerbaijan and balance with the West, and then he's also balancing his own domestic problem with those Armenians that don't like what he's doing. But they would have to be very blind not to see the benefits that their country is receiving now. But the important question, gas, is really important because once, as you know, the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline initially was offered to Armenia if they resolved the Karabakh conflict. So even dating back to the time of Haydar Aliyev, there have been efforts to try to offer Azerbaijani gas to Armenia as a way of trying to economically bring Armenia closer and help it offset its imports of Russian gas. That's true. But if Pashinyan changes the constitution, makes the conditions and settles the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict, and then opens up the Zangezur corridor, I have no doubt in believing that somehow Azerbaijan and Armenia that can repair their energy relations. And in fact, Azerbaijan has already been sending indirectly to Armenia lots of other commodities. So I don't rule out the possibility that a potential gas pipeline could be built from Zangezur to Armenia to help it offset its gas supply needs. And I think that's really important.
But does it mean that Armenia will have to leave the Eurasian Economic Union and CSTO, as it was mentioned and stated by the Russian President Vladimir Putin at the meeting with Prime Minister of Armenia Nikol Pashinyan in Russian Federation, that Armenia has to choose whether it will continue being a member of Eurasian Union or it will choose European Union integration? Does it mean that Pashinyan, or who will be in power in that country, will have to choose whether it stays within the existing unions with Russian Federation or it's moving towards Europe?
I would say there's more to lose for Putin if Armenia pulls out of the CSTO. And Armenia has already complained about the CSTO. I personally think it's dead. It's basically just Russia and Belarus and I guess you could say Kazakhstan and a little bit of Uzbekistan. But I think that Pashinyan will continue to play his balancing act. He'll continue to send observers to the CSTO and pretend that he's a member of it. But whether he pulls out, you have to think, which is worse for Putin? Armenia pulling out of the CSTO or pulling out of the Eurasian Economic Union? I would say pulling out of the Eurasian Economic Union is worse for Putin than the CSTO. So I think that basically Pashinyan has some leverage over Putin. And I think that he can use this, he won't completely pull out, but he'll downgrade his relations because he moves this thing, it kind of gyrates up and down. And that's a part of the balancing act of these countries that border Russia. They constantly have to, move up and down in their relations with Russia because of the tension with Russia, because Putin obviously wants to be the master of Armenia and control Armenia. And Pashinyan obviously gets a vote, and he can decide whether that relationship goes up or down as well. And right now, as to quote the term, I would say that Pashinyan has the cards and Putin doesn't. Because Russia is very, very far away from Armenia. The only leverage it has really is the gas. But Azerbaijan is helping Armenia, and as is Georgia.
I'm sorry, Mr. Howard, but apart from gas and cooperation in the economic field, there is still, we cannot ignore this, there is still military base of Russian Federation in Armenia.
True, that's true, but they have to get off that base. So that's also, when we're talking about trump cards, that's also a trump card for Armenia. They can ask Russia to leave the base, and they've certainly restricted the base, and they've removed Russian border guards from the border. So, and what happened then? I mean, what did Russia do? I mean, it's basically, I think there's more leverage that Pashinyan has over Russia, and you're very correct to point out that the Russian military base there at Gyumri is very, very important to Russia. It's its last foothold in the South Caucasus. So Russia also doesn't want to jeopardize losing access to that base. And Pashinyan has already removed the Russian border guard, so what else could happen? So that's a very important development, and I think that to use the term holds the cards, I would say that Pashinyan has more cards to play here than Putin, but maybe it's because I'm an optimist.
Very interesting. And my last question, Mr. Howard, with Washington anticipating a productive round of peace and energy integration discussions between Baku and Yerevan later this month, what are the realistic expectations for a final peace treaty to be signed between two countries, Azerbaijan and Armenia? I'm talking now about comprehensive peace agreement. And what specific role is the United States currently aiming to play as a possible facilitator?
Well, that's a good question, and I think that one of the things that we need to look at is what happens if Pashinyan decides not to change the Constitution, and what happens if the United States puts pressure or leverage on Azerbaijan to go ahead and sign a peace deal without Armenia changing the Constitution. So basically, all these wonderful things that we've talked about in terms of U.S. ties with Armenia, what happens if they don't change the Constitution? How does Baku react to that? And is that a deal breaker? And we don't know that. And what happens if the United States decides to put pressure on Azerbaijan to make a peace deal without Armenia not changing the Constitution? So when we see all these good relations between the United States and Armenia, the million-dollar question here is, what does that mean in terms of U.S. pressure or future pressure on Azerbaijan to go ahead, sign the deal, get it over with, and let's move on? I'm not totally sure that the Trump administration would do that to Azerbaijan, because President Aliyev has emerged as such a good, strong ally. I think he's done everything possible with the Trump administration. I think the Trump administration would listen to Azerbaijan in terms of, and they might end up potentially putting pressure on Armenia to go ahead and do this. I don't know. They'll probably stay neutral. And that's been the case up until now. You know, the track record for the Trump administration is really not to get involved with what happens in the granular details of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So I think at the grand strategic level, they'll keep hoping and encouraging them to make a deal, but they won't get involved to the point of putting pressure. Now, I will say that the Biden administration did do that on Azerbaijan, and they did pressure Azerbaijan to make a deal, okay? And they didn't pressure Armenia, okay? And that's a big difference between the Trump administration and Biden administration, because the Biden administration had all the support of the Armenian lobby inside the United States. And so they were trying to pressure Azerbaijan. In fact, I know a former U.S. official who told me that when he went to Baku, he was pressured to make Azerbaijan sign the deal, okay? And it was a personal letter from President Biden. So I think that I don't think the Trump administration would go that far. Their tendency has been to kind of keep a distance, try to encourage a positive environment, but not get involved to force one side or another to change their position. And I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. Mr. Howard, thank you so much for joining Inside Politics today.
Well, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So that was Glen Howard, President and Chairman of the Saratoga Foundation in Washington, D.C., offering his perspective on the evolving dynamics of Azerbaijan-US relations, regional security, and the political landscape in the South Caucasus. With strategic partnerships, energy diplomacy, and regional political developments continuing to shape the agenda, the coming period may prove increasingly important for the future direction of the region. You have been watching Inside Politics. Thank you for being with us, and I see you next time.